always listen to your gut. Like, because I always had this like fire in my gut that would always remind me that, Katrina, this is what you want to do. Don't be afraid to do it. So that's what I did.
Hey Zouk family, welcome back to another week, another opportunity to talk to a local Malaysian superstar, someone who has achieved things in the world of fitness. Downtown in KL, I've been to both her eatery and her studio. Club Aloha is a very famous fitness studio down in Kuala Lumpur for those tuning in from Las Vegas and Singapore. And Rubberduck is this amazing, healthy eatery attached. And I've had the pleasure of going to both a number of years ago when I was a bit fitter than I am now. She's also an ID designer and juggles multiple skills whilst managing multiple businesses, but all very successfully. Katrina, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
No, it's a huge pleasure. It's a huge pleasure. I, for one, have been, as I said, to your studio and your eatery. I love the design, I love the decor, but more importantly, I love the sense of community and the atmosphere that exists there. It's a super positive place. I love the fact that when we went to the classes, even in my earlier classes, it was super inclusive. I didn't feel awkward that I didn't know any of the moves on the spinning studio. And then I absolutely adore Rubberduck because I'm a health freak when it comes to my food. I'm actually really particular. Even though I love local food, I'm really particular, and it ticked all the boxes for me. So it stood out in my mind straight away. So how did it all begin?
Well, it all started off with my dad, actually, because when I moved back here about 6 years ago, I had the intention of just focusing on my interior design career. I moved back from New York. I was working for a very big interior design company, and we specialized in hospitality design. But then when I moved back here, I had the intention of just opening my own studio and just doing private residences, smaller scale projects. But then I partnered up with a very, very old friend of mine. Her name's Lynn, and she actually just moved back from Melbourne, and she is a pastry chef. And so we were spending a lot of time together, and my dad, who's owned many F&B outlets, mostly Warung's outdoor eateries, he suggested that we open a cafe. We kind of like dismissed the idea when my dad brought it up because we were just like, no, I don't think we're ready to do something like that. But then he insisted, and he actually found the space for us. We initially opened Rubberduck in a very small hole-in-the-wall sort of lot, and it was only about 230 square feet. And we thought, okay, initially we just had the idea of having takeaway food. But then as soon as we opened, the very first day, we were serving people, and people were just like standing there wanting to just hang out. And so it was really godsend because my dad's warung was right across from where our cafe was. So we transported all of his furniture from his place to ours, and people were able to eat their food as well as just hang out in front of the cafe. So that's how it initially started. So Rubberduck started in 2016. Wait, when did I move back? I moved back in 2014. Yes, it started in 2015, sorry. And then as we were growing our menu, we realized that the 230 square feet space wasn't big enough for us, as well as the 6 guys that were working with us. And so we found another lot, which was just 50 meters away from the lot that we were in. And then we decided that we were going to move into a bigger space. So that space we currently occupy, it's 2,300 square feet. So much, much bigger. And Lynn always knew I had wanted to open an indoor cycling studio. I had developed a business plan for it while I was still living in New York in 2010. So she remembered that I had this business plan, and she said, well, this lot that we have, it's way too big for Rubberduck. So why not open the indoor cycling studio in the same space? And I thought it was a brilliant idea because, it's also it kind of captures the cultural context of Kuala Lumpur. People like to hang out. They like to chit chat. We're always eating. We're always just like, in conversation and having a good time. And it's a very, very relaxed atmosphere. So I thought, okay, I measured out the space. I designed the space, of course, because that's my forte. And so we allocated about 550 square feet for the indoor cycling studio. And it worked wonders because there's a lot of cross marketing happening. The reception desk is right where people sit at a Rubberduck. So they were always cognizant that there was something different about the space because we hung all of the cycling shoes on the wall. And so a lot of times, Rubberduck opened first and then eventually Aloha opened. So we had our shoes directly be behind the reception desk. So people would always ask about the shoes and the cleats. And they were always like, is this a cobbler? What's going on? What's going on here? And so we actually had this elderly Chinese lady come with her shoes, and she was like, "I want to fix my shoes," And we're like, "But we're not a cobbler." She's like, "Then why the hell do you have these shoes here?" And I was like, we're eventually opening an indoor cycling studio. And she was like, "What is that?" And she just like kind of walked away in a huff. But anyway, regardless, it was quite interesting to see the dynamics between the two spaces and how people reacted to it. So we opened the new Rubberduck in November of 2016, and the following January 2017, we opened Aloha.
Hey, congratulations. It's an awesome success. And I've actually sat exactly where you're describing, and it's phenomenal. The ID work is incredibly clever because you do cross-pollinate both. But the one thing I have to say that I loved the most was, so I sat on the nice sort of sofa area, which is right next to the reception desk. And what I think is the nicest part is you see people who have left their class who are super full of endorphins and they're super pumped having done a great class. And it inspires you to want to go because they come out and have coffee. So you've built that sort of, like I said, a real positive environment, which I think makes it a really attractive place to go. And as you say, you can lose hours just sitting and talking and chatting, and you're going to bump into maybe a friend there, and so on and so forth. So it's so you were miles ahead of the curve as far as Malaysia is concerned. You were looking at this in 2010. What inspired you to move into the studio space, the spinning studio?
It was from my personal experience. I've been doing indoor cycling since I was in university. So it's been over 20 years. It's my cardio of choice. I stumbled upon it when I first went to Gold's Gym in West Hollywood because I was studying in LA, and I was studying architecture. And fitness was very much ingrained in my DNA, but because I was studying architecture, it was just so crazy. I was always so stressed. So I decided to get a membership at, I was going to say fitness first, but Gold's Gym. And the first day I was taking a tour, I remember going upstairs and I could hear this like thumping music and people just yelling and screaming. And I remember so vividly, there was this room with like a horizontal window, and I kind of like peeked through it, and I was just thinking like, what in the hell is going on in this space? And I saw like the instructor on the bike, he was like front and center, and everybody was just around him. Everyone had their tops off and they were just sweating, and they were all just riding to the music, and it just looked incredible. So the next day I decided, okay, I'm going to go back and I'm going to try this class. And so I did. It was a little bit intimidating because everybody knew what they were supposed to be doing, and everyone had cycling shoes and I didn't, but it didn't matter. Everybody was so welcoming there. And yeah, so that was like my first taste of indoor cycling. So I've always been doing it at least like 3 times a week. I have my own bikes. I've always had like bikes in my home. And when I moved to New York, I did my master's there, and I of course stumbled upon Zouk Cycle. I think everybody who knows anything about indoor cycling or even boutique fitness, Zouk Cycle is one of the very first pioneer of fitness boutique fitness studio. They're the ones who really understood like people's psyche, and also making sure that the experience was very streamlined, and it's kind of like no frills, but at the same time it was very convenient because they were the first ones to introduce website reservations booking, booking your bike, so you don't have to like come in early to put your towel on the bike. Everything about it was just so amazing. And what really resonated with me, especially with Soul Cycle, was that most of the instructors, if not all of the instructors, they weren't just fitness instructors, they were also motivational coaches. And so that was like my version of therapy while I was living in New York. And so after going there for about three months or so, I just decided that I had to share this experience. And so what I did was just create a business plan, and I just thought, I just knew that I was going to move back to Malaysia and I was going to open an indoor cycling studio one day.
And you have, and you've done it amazingly well. And I totally resonate with what you talk about. I've loved weightlifting, powerlifting for the longest time, and it's how I get over the stresses of my day. And I find that there's also community around it of other like-minded people who enjoy participating and supporting each other. And as you say, it's really interesting mix between instructors and therapists, which also generate this positivity by telling people how well they're doing and how well they're improving. Yeah. It's a great environment. It's a very supportive environment as well.
Yeah, and I was really cognizant about like creating an environment where everybody felt inclusive, like building an inclusive environment, and also very approachable environment. I was very aware not to create a place where it felt like very niche in terms of like who would be coming to the studio. I wanted like anybody of all ages, grandma, grandpa, mother, father, children. I wanted everybody to feel like this is their sanctuary in terms of fitness, as well as like, just being in a place where they could hang out and make new friends.
Yeah, I love that. Sanctuary is a great word. It's a great description of what I think many people feel. I mean, my mother's in her 70s now. She still has a PT. She's had the same PT for 15 years. And I'm sure he's more of a life coach than he is a fitness coach. And so developing that sanctuary, that positive reaffirmation is so key. I really want to ask you this, Katrina, because you're clearly someone, not just myself telling you how well you've done, but many people in KL recommended I spoke to you for our podcast because of what you've achieved and how well you've done. And you took an idea, you were inspired, you built a business plan, you rolled it out, you expanded. Can I ask you, what would your advice be to the graduates of today who maybe dream of achieving what you've achieved? Maybe they've even got an idea of their own, but they're petrified about what lies ahead, especially at this time where everyone would be a little bit nervous about what's coming up in the future. But what would be your number one piece of advice to anyone who would love to pursue what you've pursued?
I say, a lot of people actually ask me this question, and I always go back to this, and that is to always go with your gut. Really fuel your knowledge with experiences. What I did was I went to all of this. I think I've been to like hundreds and thousands of fitness studios just to see like what makes them special or why people go to these particular studios, and also like asking people around me, strangers that are in classes with me, like what they like about the studio. Not only that, like just also feeding yourself with experiences that make you feel uncomfortable too. I think like, moving to New York, getting my master's, working for a really amazing interior design company. I was always uncomfortable, but because I was uncomfortable, it made me feel like I was learning something that I didn't know about myself yet. And through those experiences, I feel like it really built on my confidence. And I always knew too that I was gonna build my own company eventually, but I needed the experience in order to do that. So I guess two things is feeding your knowledge with new experiences and experiences that make you uncomfortable. And also, I guess the second would be, doing things like working for somebody else, getting the experiences from them, and understanding like how a business works. And I have a third one, to just like always listen to your gut. Like, because I always had this like fire in my gut that would always remind me that, Katrina, this is what you want to do. Don't be afraid to do it. So that's what I did.
That's really solid advice. No one's ever been as direct and as honest to say, go outside of your comfort zone. But I totally agree with you. I felt the same way when I moved to Malaysia, not knowing a single person, or when I moved up to Genting, and you look at the projects ahead and you think, a bit nervous, but then it's only when you discover who you really are when you step outside your comfort zone, because that's when you really experience and you challenge yourself with yourself. So that's phenomenal advice. Thank you so much. Now, I normally ask this final question, but first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. It's really
thanks so much for having me. Really.
Not at all. And I genuinely mean it when I say to people, they must go and check this place out. You must go and see Aloha. You must go and see Rubberduck, because I genuinely believe it's a really warm environment. It's a really enjoyable place to visit. The studio and the classes are really inclusive, and for anyone of any ability, definitely any ability, because people have the same ethos as Katrina. Super inclusive, and anyone that does want healthy food, I would go to Rubberduck. But I normally ask everyone, people are coming to KL for the first time, it's your hometown, recommend places, but instead I want to ask you, give us an example of a class to attend at Aloha. Give us a dish or dishes that people must try at Rubberduck, because I'm gonna drive people to go there. So you got to recommend the dishes.
Well, with Rubberduck, my go-to is, I love our sunshine bowl. It's a mango pineapple smoothie. We serve it with our homemade granola and fresh fruit, with something a little bit more savory. I would order the roast chicken. It's kind of an homage to a dish that I used to eat here in KL when I was growing up. It's a roast chicken with coleslaw, and we serve it with mashed potatoes and gravy. I just love it. I love it. It's very it's so comforting. It's comfort food, and you must try our lemon meringue tart. It's the best, I think. Our chocolate beetroot cake is amazing. I don't normally love chocolate cake, but I just love this cake because it's not too sweet and it's just wonderful. And then with Club Aloha, I don't know if you're aware of this, but we've opened up a strength and conditioning and recovery studio as well. So we had to do a rebranding. We initially started off as Aloha Cycle Club, but now the overarching company is called Club Aloha, and now we have Aloha Cycle Club as well as Aloha Muscle Club. So if anybody is not that interested in doing indoor cycling, they can always take a strength and conditioning class at Aloha Muscle Club, and that class is called Aloha Signature. And then for the indoor cycling studio, you must try an Aloha ride. All of our instructors are amazing. They're so knowledgeable and very, very experienced. And yeah, you can also take a class with me. I teach the Aloha ride at Club Aloha.
There you go. My mouth is watering, to be totally honest. I would definitely come and try the food. But I didn't know about the strength and conditioning, but that's something that would definitely appeal to me. So, Katrina, thanks again so much for your time. It's super inspirational.
Thank you.
Not just from a perspective of you took a dream and you executed it, but you've given great insights into research, into trying things, and also giving it a chance, even if you're a little bit nervous. Got that little voice in your head says, you got to do it. Because if you don't try, you don't know. And even if it doesn't work out, it's nothing, right? So, Katrina, thanks so much. Stay safe. Stay
you.
And we hope to meet you in person, and we can't wait to check out the classes.
Yeah, come visit us.
I will. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.